What's up? Welcome back to the BU podcast. I have an amazing person with me today. She is a friend of mine, but most importantly, she is a relationship expert, a magnetic matchmaker, host of a Spicy Life podcast. And what I love so much is that her mission, she strives so hard to restore our faith and love. Miss Beautiful, the wonderful, Spicy Marty.
Hey, can I get a round of applause?
Did I
Thank you
miss
for having
anything
me,
out?
Jess. No,
Of
that was
course.
beautiful. I mean, you did forget to mention that I'm the CEO and founder of the Spicy Life relationship consulting firm, but who's keeping track?
Spicy, since I met you, like you've always been about love and relationships, but I do know prior to you getting involved in that, you did have like a backstory when it comes to breaking into the entertainment industry. What was it like first getting into radio before you ventured off pursuing your dreams in relationship expert?
Getting into radio. Okay. I feel like the plan always long term was getting into television.
Uh-huh.
And radio was like a blessing in disguise, because I just knew that, like, even based on like my media background and having gone to school for like human behavior and communication being the number one breakdown, like us living in a digital age, I understood the importance of also how these platforms work and how we're using them now to intersect relationships and media.
Uh-huh.
So when it came to radio, that's another platform, right? Like that's another tool that's used in order to send a mass message out there. And
Mhm.
because I knew my message was love, like by any means necessary, whether it's TV, radio, I mean, now, social media is included. Like, how is this message going to get out there? And so actually just putting material out there.
Mhm.
And that's how I got into radio, was like giving spicy tips away on like my social media, and then DJs reaching out like, oh my God, can you talk about these spicy tips on the air? And so that was like my first break at KGLH, was like having one of the DJs ask me to come in and give spicy tips on the air. And so because I already had like some background in media and been classically trained as a host, I felt like competent enough to go on there. And when the mic like cracked open, talking about relationships came like naturally to me, to the point where I was like, oh, I need to be able to like use this space and do it more often. So like the Saturday Night Mixdown, we started doing a radio show as a part of like Ricky Waters' weekly like spin session. I would jump in there and give relationship advice. And then from there, like relationships and connecting and like being, of course, coached by like Nautica de la Cruz and her becoming my mentor, and her really like explaining that you have to be a powerhouse and you can't just know how to be a personality. You also have to learn how to like run the board and be able to create your own programming and like producing your own show.
Mhm.
That helped me when it came to like trying to pitch myself to like Doc Winters and getting on 92.3. So it's been like years of like, definitely putting in that time, doing like a lot of free work first, because even prior to getting on KGLH, I was already like hosting content on red carpets and stuff like that for free. And anytime I could get a relationship question in there, I would, or like just messaging. So really putting in like that time and effort and going from like free to paid probably was like one of the biggest accomplishments. I think a lot of people in the entertainment industry will tell you that.
To
But
get
it was
paid to do
definitely
what
started
you
off
love,
as a
right?
struggle. Yeah, like it started off with like, Lord, why am I doing this? Like, and that's why it has to be so purpose driven, because you have to put so much time and effort into it before you actually like reap the benefits. But you do reap what you sow. The difference is though, like, you can't give up. So like there's people who want this, but they don't want it bad enough to do it by any means necessary for however long it's necessary in order to get to the next step. They tap
Right.
out. And so that's like the difference between the people who make it and the people who don't, is like the talent, but also like the energy and effort they're willing to sacrifice and put in.
Did any of your friends, like as you were like pursuing, I mean, in the industry right now, did any of your friends kind of like not take you seriously because you're always bringing up relationship, or you have like a spicy tip or something? Like sometimes you don't even like, they don't even ask you for it. Did they ever take you seriously or thought you were tripping?
Um, so I get told to shut up a lot. Um, because I'm constantly holding up a mirror, right? Like
Yeah.
in all my relationships, I'm gonna hold you accountable, and I expect that from me as well. Like I want the same in the relationship that I'm in. I want you to hold me accountable. So
Mhm.
like sometimes people do just as like a friend want to vent, and so I've had to teach myself that throughout the years is like, okay, does this person want advice or does this person just want support?
Right.
And I think that I always have to relate it back to relationships. I think like even my partner, my husband, does like a great job of like, okay, does my wife want me to problem solve right now, or does she want me to just like be her pillow and her blanket? And
Mm-hmm.
so having to learn how to pivot back and forth from like my profession to like just being a friend, I would get told like, be quiet, we don't want like your solutions all this time. Sometimes like we just want to go through our failures on our own. And
Right.
like having to having to give myself the permission to just like watch a complete disaster happening before your eyes, like a
Mm-hmm.
toxic relationship, and being like, okay, so how does that make you feel? Yeah, of course, right? Like
Oh my God.
having to like bite my tongue has been super, super hard. But if I want to have these healthy relationships, like knowing when to pick and choose my battles and when to input my expertise and when to pull back on that has definitely been like a juggling act.
Now, I know like when it comes to working in this industry, it could be very, very challenging and trying. Where were some cases where like you felt like you had to kind of prove yourself worthy? For example, you're Latina and Black. And
Mhm.
did you ever feel like you had an issue to where people didn't think you were Black enough to comment on this or Latina enough to comment on that? And like, how did you kind of navigate through all those naysayers?
Oh my God, absolutely. That's a great question. How do I handle being right biracial? I'm going through my Meghan Markle experience. Um, no, and I don't mean to make light of it. Like I don't mean to,
Yeah.
but I have to laugh at myself or I'm gonna be crying. So
Yeah.
like growing up, even experiencing being biracial and having to, answer on a daily basis, like, what are you? And then people always guessing wrong or making an assumption. And having to like clarify that. My mom instilled a certain level of pride in me when it came to my ethnicity. And so being proud of like both of my races, even my Yaqui tribe, like heritage, because I'm also like Native American, like being proud of like all of my smorgasbord of ethnicities, was ingrained in me at a very young age, even when other people told me that it sucked or that I was less than because I was a mixed breed, like pushing back and always being like, well, that's your opinion. I'm proud of what I am.
Mm-hmm.
Has definitely helped, especially in the industry, because I'm not just dealing with like fighting against the numbers and the stats of like one minority group. I have two minority groups that I'm like
Right.
fighting on behalf of, and two minority groups who are, who receive a lot of bias, who receive a lot of things that hold us back from a racial standpoint and that make it hard to navigate even on a professional level because we aren't afforded the same opportunities all the time,
Mm-hmm.
or we have so much doubters, like knowing, okay, well, I'm representing both of my people here, so if like I can get in this, I'm killing two birds with one stone, and like be able to speak up on on behalf of both of my people. And so
Right.
looking at it more as like a responsibility and something that I get to be proud of versus something that I'm ashamed of,
Mm-hmm.
which I think oftentimes people want to categorize you or put you in a box and make you choose. And I refuse. Like, you're not going to have me against half of my other side or against this other group of people. Like, I represent both.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing where I stand and being proud of both has definitely helped even navigating in the industry. And even like back in school, I remember like I've done a lot of reports too on like how women coming from both of my minority groups like make it in the industry. And it's slim to none, like that you make it, period, let alone if you're Black and Mexican.
Very.
So we have like a ton of odds against us. So like knowing that and pushing through and being like, okay, well, I get that the stats say that we're not gonna make it, I'm gonna do it anyways. So just having like that persevere mindset has definitely been able to help.
Have you always had that perseverance mindset? Or did you have to develop that?
So it's been developed. So I'm gonna say this. Like, I give a lot of credit to like Spicy Mama for making me this like
Oh.
cocky ass monster that I am. Like, I'm cocky as hell. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, but I can back it up. I talk
Uh,
it and I walk it. But there's been moments of self doubt where like friends, family, lovers had to pick me up off of the floor because I'm like, why? Why did I choose this industry? Like, and especially trying to merge relationship and entertainment together, right? Because eventually I will have my own relationship TV show. But like merging both
okay.
of these industries, yes, manifesting, merging both of these like these industries together and using like the platforms that I can in order to spread like the relationship gospel has been like a struggle. Like, it's for the long, like relationships just became popping. And I
It's
had to
true.
foresee that when people told me that I was crazy for wanting to push this relationship message or for like wanting to be, this expert in this field or even be a relationship coach. Like, I remember people telling me like, why can't you just get a normal 9 to 5? Or why can't you just like work for the man? And so knowing that, okay, I want to be in entertainment, but I also want to give people the best relationship advice that I can.
Mhm.
Having to like push through that, and then sometimes not getting every time a win. Like, and now I've learned how to say like, oh, well, it wasn't a win, it was a learning lesson. But before it felt like a damn loss. Like it felt like an L. Like I have pitched shows, I have auditioned for different radio shows, different TV shows. I've pitched different relationship shows. I've done so much as far as like working for different people in order to like get my credibility up. I've gone back to school. Like I've invested over 100K in this business. So if people try to come at me and try to say like you haven't put in the work, and when it does happen, it's going to blow and it's going to happen. People are going to think that it happened overnight, but little do they know it's been more than 10 years that I've been like pushing this relationship message and pushing this like platform that needs to happen from a healthy standpoint, right? Because like we see a lot of shows around toxic relationships, but like shows on like what healthy relationships look like. That's something that I'm like, nope, I'm fighting against like toxicity.
Yeah.
And so I'm out here like Captain Save a Soul versus Captain Save a Hoe.
Yeah.
And so when
I
it
love that.
happens, I know people are going to be like, oh, overnight success. No, boo. Like blood, sweat, and tears. Literally, I have blood for this industry. That's a whole nother story. But like, I have bled for it. Like I have pushed through. I have sleepless nights, like hungry, like no money, to the point now where like, yes, I'm finally successful. And I can say I've reached like financial goals that, coming from like my background, probably for a long time, like never would have thought I would have achieved. And now I've set the bar even higher. Each time I hit a goal, I'm like, oh, set the bar higher, set the bar higher. So it's definitely been a struggle, but it hasn't always been like this persevere by any means necessary. While that is my like one of my mantras, I still fall. Like I fall all the time and I get the hell back up. And I relate it all the time to dating. Like I've built resilience up around rejection. Even when I talk to my clients about relationships, like I've taken so many L's, but I've also put myself out there more than other people. So when clients come to me and they're like, oh, but you know, I haven't had that many wins, or, you know, I've only, you know, had this amount of rejections. I'm like, I can triple that number because I've put myself out there so many times. That's how I built up the resiliency and the rejection muscle to be able to like still keep going and get my damn husband. It's the same thing when it comes to like your career. Like you're going to get 1,000 no's, but it's like, all you need is that yes. And it's the same thing when it comes to walking down that aisle.
I love how spicy, no matter what it is, like she'll relate it to relationships. I don't know how you do it. I really don't know how. Since you were younger, Spicy, would you say you've always kind of been like a sucker for love? Like, did you always see yourself married? Or, you know, every female has like their dream wedding. Did you see that at a young age?
At a young age, I knew like relationships were important. So my mom married 3 times thanks to me. Like I was going out in like the grocery store, gas stations, trying to set her up with different men, because I noticed that like when mom was in a relationship, she was happier. Like when mom was in a relationship, she was nicer to me. I got hit a lot less. We had more like disposable income. I didn't call it disposable income at the time. I called it toys when I was little. Right. But like life was better when mom was in a relationship. So I always related like happiness and even like success in life to relationships. But it was a part of that too that was like the downfall. If you don't have, and me learning that like through my studies as well, that if you don't have the self-worth and self-esteem to support like healthy relationships and being able to choose and use discernment when it comes to your selection process in like the mating process, right? You will make bad decisions and you will continue these like reoccurring cycles. And my whole goal and like one of my missions is to restore the family unit and end generational curses. And so with that, like it's always been ingrained on my heart, but I wasn't educated about like what the healthy component was. I had to do some of that education on my own, and even like take advice from my mom, who was like, don't make these same mistakes that I did. But from a young girl, it was always like, I want a daddy by any means necessary. Why don't I have a whole family like everybody else? Mm-hmm. And I felt like entitled to that. And so I was like, come on, mama, put that dress on that I like. How are we gonna make this happen? And so it's the same thing now, like with my clients. I'm like, put that dress on, like, come on, girl, let's get it. So it's been in me since I was little. I have a lot of like my mom's like fights and passion and spice, but like with the education and also like the skill set and the formulas that I know based on like testing and trying and in like case studies that I've done, even in trials in my master's program, and then trying them out with like actual clients too, I know that it works to the point where I'm about to write a book on it and it will be out this year.
I like to
But
hear
like,
that.
it's been in me since I was little though. Like I've
Yeah.
always been in love with love. And I can recognize when someone wants love and what the difference is when it looks like someone wanting love versus when someone's willing to have love. And those look like two different things.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something before you said about having self-worth, and I wanted to kind of like jump into asking more like relationship questions. You have this one thing that you say a lot that I love, and it's when did you fall in love with yourself? So now
Oh yeah.
I want to ask you, Spicy Madi. I was like, ooh, that's a good one. When did you fall in love with Spicy Madi?
So this has been a growing process, and I do feel like I fall in love with myself more and more all the time, that I'm like going back to my affirmations list and my like gratitudes list, and I'm like, oh, I did do that. Oh, I did do that. And every year that like I get to check off stuff on my vision board. But like one specific incident sticks out if we want to talk about like story wise. And it was me crying over a dude who I knew wasn't good for me, but I wanted the relationship so bad, not the person. I just wanted the companionship. And realizing in that moment, like, oh crap, this is like what my mom has been trying to prevent. My mom has been trying to like warn me about. And so my mom calls me and she's like, you know, what's going on? I'm like, so hurt over this guy. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm making a list of like pros and cons, why I should go back to him. And she's like, you need to make that list for yourself. What is it about you that makes you want to go back to him? What is it about you that makes you want to settle? What is it about you that will make you compromise? And what is about you that didn't have you introduce him to me? What are you ashamed of? And I was like, dang, I was like, mom, I got to put me in my place. But, you know, relationships have always been open conversations for her. She's been talking about sex with me since I understood what the word sex meant, like since I was little, like elementary school, because she was like very big on making sure that I didn't make the same mistakes. And so here I am now repeating a pattern that I said, like, I didn't want to repeat of this, you know, generational curse. And now I'm wanting this boy who I know it's not a healthy relationship, but either it's time, like I put my big girl pants on and I go back to what like tastes like candy, right? Because you get into this like tumultuous toxicity of a relationship. Or I learned to love what's good for me and I eat my vegetables. And I chalked it up. I made a list. My mom told me I did it on myself. And I was like, dang, I'm over here struggling. So now it's actually a part of my curriculum. That's one of the exercises that like clients have to do when they're going through like X decisions, like if they should go back to the guy or stay. I have it a part of the curriculum, but it was like that moment that I was like, dang, I have to choose me. Like I have to love me more than I love the idea of a relationship. And oftentimes like we stay in relationships, not because we love the person so much and like who that person is, but because we love the idea of a relationship so much. And so coming to terms with that and being like, oh, no, I choose me. Like that was really one of like the biggest transitions into me making healthier choices in my relationships and catching and releasing quicker. And like I tell my clients to this day, like catch and release, catch and release. If we see the red flags and we understand that like we communicated what our needs were and they can't meet them, we have to move on to the next person. Because if not, you're going to be stuck behind door number 3 a lot longer when your hubby may be behind door number 20. Like,
right. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Take a shit and get off the pot. Ooh, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but
you're good.
Beat that. But I think that's a part of like the process. So that was when that was like my, I gotta love myself. I gotta vibrate higher. Like that was like my moment that like sticks out the most when it comes to the self-love component. And I practice it every single day because oftentimes we have to give up things that aren't good for us that we don't want to, or people that aren't good for us that we don't want to.
Right. What kind of self-work would you say needs to be done in someone before they try to go out and get their purpose mate?
My 90-day program.
Tell me about it. Let's talk about it.
My 90-day program. So it's SPICY. So it stands for what Spicy stands for, the acronym, which is self, passion, intimacy, communication, and learning to say yes. So at the root and like at the core of all of it is self, right? Like who are you? What do you want and what do you have to offer? Like that's all of self, but also how do you self-regulate? How do you increase your self-esteem, and where's your level of self-worth at when you're coming into the program? And then we assess like passion, what are your passions in life? What are your partner's passions in life? And also, how do you ignite passion within them? The next phase is I for intimacy. And that's how do you connect and bond with someone? How do you guide their emotions? How do you regulate your own? And then the next phase is communication. How do you deliver this message? What platform are you delivering this message on? And then is it verbal, nonverbal? Like knowing, really understanding like how you show up in the world from a communication level.
Right.
And then the last part is yes. And yes is usually the hardest part for everyone because it's about your belief system and like also the art of negotiation. Like how do you get what you want? Starts with your belief, but then also like how do you get what you want and what are you willing to sacrifice in order to get it? Most people don't want to sacrifice anything, which is why people are like, I'm just not going to date because that means I have to sacrifice my ego. And so when you can't sacrifice things that are holding you back, you will continue to run in place.
What's like one of the most common things that keeps people running in place that holds them back from, finding that perfect one?
A lack of self-awareness, not really knowing or understanding who they are and how they show up. And the second part that goes with that is intimacy, not willing to be vulnerable and show who they really are because their need for acceptance is more than their desire to create connection. So they would go ahead.
I was going to say, would you say that vulnerability is actually a power tool? Because a lot of people find it very hard to be vulnerable.
Yes, absolutely. So I love that you said that because that's so true. And that's what I teach. A lot of like my alpha women and alpha men that come in have a hard time with vulnerability and the intimacy component. And when I talk about intimacy, I'm talking about emotional intimacy, right? There's physical intimacy. Majority of y'all can like get down. What I talk about though, and what I preach is about emotional intimacy and like how we connect and bond on an emotional level. And that usually looks like us being vulnerable first and then asking for vulnerability from someone. Most people don't want to be vulnerable first. Most people are walking around, living their life dating and having these encounters or these experiences, even with colleagues, friends, family members, lovers, and expecting that other person to make them feel comfortable so that they feel comfortable to share. Yeah. And the empowerment part, that comes from being the person who controls everybody else's emotions. So if I can be vulnerable first, I can guide all of you guys to vulnerability. And now I'm the power player. The person who controls the emotions of other people is the person who's in the position of power. It's not the other way around. If I'm the person who's waiting for everybody else to make me feel a certain type of way, now I am susceptible to your guys's like desires and needs and wants and putting you guys in the driver's seat versus us steering and guiding other people's emotions to feeling safe and secure and opening up. So that's what I usually teach like my alphas who come in is like, how do we become more vulnerable and how does that show up? And not from a position of like weakness, but a position of power and strength.
I like that a lot. Now you are married now. Your husband, Shay, is so amazing. I love you two together.
I think I keep him.
I really love you two together so much.
No, he's amazing. He's amazing.
When did you know that he was the right one for you?
Several things. So like knowing my spicy method, which he swears up and down, like he didn't need a matchmaker or a relationship expert. I'm like, what do you think I was using on you the entire time? There's several things that I want to say that I like tested, not making him like run through like a series of tests, like a boot camp, but more of certain things that I know that I needed that I tested for in the relationship prior to committing and prior to like, I was abstinent for a very long time with him so that I could have clarity and peace of mind in my decision making. I made sure that from a, like, if we talk about like love languages, that my love languages were fulfilled in advance before I decided to be like emotionally committed to just this person. And I also made sure that when it came to like the treatment, right? So I was often talking about like the pizza. Is this person's like crust?
No, I was gonna ask about the pizza. I was gonna ask you about that actually. Keep going.
Oh, okay. So like at the pizza, was he like my pizza? And what like the pizza is, for those of you guys that know, is the exercise that I give my clients. And the crust is the foundation, the sauce is the treatment, and then the toppings is like the looks, the aesthetics. So is he my pizza, right? Did he have the 5 things that I needed in order to consider him a good person and to respect him as a human being? And then the next layer, which is the sauce, is like, how does he treat me? And that's where like the 5 love languages get fulfilled. And I need all 5 because I'm greedy. But does he like satisfy all of these love languages? And then how does he show up for me? And is he willing to like, you know, protect, provide, and profess his love for me at the same time? And then the toppings was, more around like lifestyle and also the aesthetics. And like, do I have enough of these things in order to be satisfied in this relationship? And does he make me want to be a better version of myself, in the relationship? And so because those elements were like yes and yes and yes, and a huge important thing that I always strongly recommend is like, before you allow yourself to like fall in love with someone, I believe in like rising in love. And what rising in love
Yeah, what's
looks
that?
looks like not being painful, not weighing down on you, not going against your core values, not breaking your deal breakers. And like rising in love looks like you being able to grow with someone into a purpose mate. Like, is this person someone who builds me up? Even sometimes when I may put myself down, like, do they pick me up? Do they pick themselves up? What does their lifestyle look like? And how dedicated they're to the things that they love? Because how dedicated they are to those, if I have his love, he will be just as dedicated to me. So like looking at his life also in comparison, but more importantly, like conflict resolution, because it's not just about how great he treats me. It's also about like when he's not happy with me, when I do fail at something, or we do get in like, the bad, thick of things, like how he works through conflict. Because looking at conflict in my household growing up, me knowing, okay, I'm trying to break generational curses here. What does conflict resolution look like? Having like studied that theoretically, but then also like practicing on other boyfriends, and then like now trying to get, with my boyfriend, fiance, and husband at the time, like, is he someone who tackles problems head on, like an alpha male, or is he softer, more relaxed approach, like a beta? And me knowing that I wanted an alpha, someone who was like strong and take control of situations like that, but do it also in a loving way. He had to pass like that series of tests for me. So like I didn't commit to him until after we got into our first fight. And making sure like, okay, you can handle me, like, and you can handle this, right? Like, do you crumble and fall at the moment of challenge, or do you rise to the occasion? And so putting him through kind of these series, and then also his series that he put me through, like, let me know we were compatible. And I preach all the time on like, it's not just enough to have chemistry, you also need to have compatibility.
Right. That's very important. Do you think that an alpha male and alpha female could be together? Like, with no
Absolutely.
issues at all?
Yes.
Okay.
So like, I have an episode on my podcast for The Spicy Life where I'm talking about how an alpha woman gets an alpha man. And I was referring to, and I used me and Shay as an example. But what a lot of us as alpha women who are, extremely strong, like we love our independence, and we also take control. We're used to being in leadership positions, and extremely vocal usually as well. What happens though in the company of a very like masculine energy, we want to turn our masculine energy just as high. And what we have to do when it comes to being in the presence of an alpha man is not lower our energy, but respect the energy of the alpha that's with us. And so in those moments, you have to use discernment and choose like, okay, do I need to answer this with more softness and love and sit in my feminine energy with flexibility and allowing and ease? Or do I need to be just as stern as my masculine alpha male? And what we soon learn to find is that you're not going to outman a man. Like you can't, us as women are never going to outman a man.
Oh my gosh, that's a fact. And a lot of women try. They really do.
Right?
They really
you ain't
do.
gonna outman a man. So like if you're an alpha female, like, and you want alpha male, you are going to have to sit in your feminine energy and learn how to pivot between the workplace, right? Where we're used to like fighting for everything that we want, and especially in our industry, and like having to like, roar, closed mouths don't get fed, then like learning how to pivot when it comes to your relationship and still showing up like beautiful and strong, but knowing like when to affirm your partner, knowing when to relax, knowing when to let somebody else take the driver's seat, and when you should be, in the passenger seat. And it doesn't mean that you have to be in the back seat. It just looks more like co-captain. It looks more like VP. It looks more like VP versus like us thinking that it's like this weakness, or like someone else, taking control, or, being in this power position. Like it feels good to allow someone else to be in that power position, because we have to do it all the time. So it's really a juggling act that my like alpha women come in with, having to learn how to pivot between the two. Because I don't want them to ever feel like they have to lose their power. It's more of me having to remind them, like, you're an alpha queen. Imagine the power of being able to guide your alpha king. Like, it's one thing to be powerful on your own. But now you have like a soldier who's in like partnership with you. Do you know the world and the thing you'll be able to take over? Like you can take over like anything when you have like two, power players. So it's reframing like the perspective of what it looks like to be able to like have your soldier or tame your dragon and what that looks like in order to do that. And I use Game of Thrones, Khaleesi. Are you a Game of Thrones fan?
I'm not, but you can fill me in.
Oh,
I'm not a Game of Thrones fan.
okay. I use Khaleesi, Queen of Dragons, as like, how did Khaleesi tame her dragon, right? It's like she was powerful because she's a queen, but like she became more powerful when she had her dragons. And so she didn't instill fear into her dragons in order to tame them. She used like love and nurtured them and like, held them and pet them and was like wonderful to them and built their trust with them so that when she did want her dragons to breathe fire, they were under her whim. And so, but she didn't use it through like force or like by being aggressive and angry and mean. And she didn't try to breathe fire, stronger than the dragons. Right. She used love in order to tame her dragons. And that's what you have to use when you're an alpha woman trying to get an alpha man. And a lot of times, not every alpha woman's cut out for it. Sometimes an alpha woman needs to get her a beta because she's not willing to do what it takes to get an alpha man.
What exactly is a beta man?
So when we think of it from an animalistic standpoint, right, like the term alpha originally comes from how they described like the leader of animals in a pack of like wolves, for instance. So the alpha is the one who like is the fastest, quickest, barks the loudest, also has the most amount of like people in their pack that they would be like leading. Mm-hmm. So a beta is more of like the type of man who is going to be a little bit more submissive. He sits more in his feminine energy. He's more understanding. He's more allowing. He's more at ease. And so we oftentimes use like beta and alpha to describe like masculine and feminine energy men. And so masculine energy men is like more structured, direct. They're going to be more stern, a lot more confident, a lot more arrogant, and they're going to vocalize it. A beta man is going to be more like caring and understanding and softer in his approach and not necessarily take the reins. He's going to be more flexible. He's going to be sitting more in his feminine energy. And sometimes that is great if you are a beta man or a woman who wants a beta man and you want to be like the woman who's in the position of power. You still have to make your beta man feel good and feel like a man. But when it comes to like the bigger decisions, or when it comes to having to think quick on his feet, or when it comes to having to take control, that may not be something that he feels the need to have to do.
Right. Okay.
So I love beta men. Beta men just aren't for me, but I do love a good beta man, and I've dated beta men. I don't think that you should make a decision between an alpha man and a beta man unless you dated both to be able to compare. Beta men usually get a bad rap because they usually are friend zoned. They usually, wind up not giving romantic sexual energy as strong. So when I do get a beta man that comes into the program, like I figure out first what kind of woman he wants, if he wants an alpha or a beta woman. And then we tailor like his approach to that and strengthening up maybe some things that would help him come off, in more of that like sexual romantic energy, or at least create more of that passion element that women need in order to feel as if like they're romantically attracted to you. So it really is like my whole program is about like tailoring it towards like what your relationship goal is.
Right. And something else that you brought up too that's very important is how communication doesn't always have to be a confrontation.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, ladies. Let me tell you, I think it's just so common for a woman to not speak up to really tell you how they feel because they're so worried about the confrontation. But what if they're dealing with like a man that's always confrontational? Like, how do they navigate through that?
If they're dealing with a man who's always confrontational, like, are you saying he operates extreme in his like defensiveness and he's combative?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're dealing with a man like that, who also is very like egocentric and he can't step outside of like maybe what he believes to be right to hear you, you're probably dealing with a man who's in his wounded masculine. And what being in your wounded masculine is exactly that. Like he's been hurt. He's on the defense. He constantly feels like he's being threatened. He has extremely like competitive energy, and oftentimes uses his power in an abusive way. So oftentimes we call this like, or for example, you being gaslit in a relationship where you try to like let him know that he's doing something that doesn't serve you or that isn't healthy, and he makes you feel like you're crazy or delusional and it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
If you're dealing with a wounded masculine, you have to see, is he willing to heal those wounds that made him that way? And if he's not, then why are we in the relationship? Usually though, my wounded feminine stay long time with wounded masculine. When you're someone who's like operating from a healthy vibration and you're in your natural feminine and you're loving and you're caring, you get with a wounded masculine man, you will recognize this. If you are healthy in a healthy state of mind, you will recognize this and not want to stay, right? So like
Right.
when we're in our healthiest place, we're not usually as attracted to wounded birds. And so if you can release these relationships quicker, like I said, get off the pot, you can find you someone who's operating from like the same level of healing or the same level of maybe EQ as you, your emotional IQ. And so oftentimes though, when we are hurt ourselves or we're fixers or we're looking for that person to overcompensate for voids that are in our life, we'll stay with that person out of fear of not wanting to move on or fear out of us not being able to find someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so we stay a lot longer than we should with these wounded masculine energies, because we too probably have some wounded feminine energy that we're working through. Wounded usually attracts wounded, and wounded usually chooses wounded.
That makes sense. That makes really, really sense. And I'm just thinking to myself, what about the ladies out there, even the men who are afraid to speak up and have that really dark, like, communicative conversations? What tips and steps would you suggest that they take in order to have like a really serious conversation without the confrontation, to try to avoid that?
If you know the person who you're dealing with, right, you like need to study your partner. If you're in a relationship with someone and you know like how they handle when things are brought to their attention, maybe sometimes it is controversial or maybe it does hit a sore spot, then you need to think about like environment, time, the rebuttals that they're going to have. Are they an active participant in this conversation? Are they mentally, physically, emotionally prepared for this conversation? Are they educated on the topic at hand? And also, if they are going to have rebuttals for this, like what are your rebuttals to the rebuttals? So you need to think about all this in mind from a positive perspective instead of a negative, because if you go into it with the negative belief that like this person's going to explode or this person's going to handle it the way that they always do, like how can you tailor that message and shift it in a way that they can receive it? So instead of saying it the way that you want to receive it, you need to say it the way that the receiver wants to receive it and put their emotional needs first in that sense. But like sometimes you're like, well, F it, I don't care, I just need to get this out. When you don't take that party into consideration and you just implode, or you've maybe been passive aggressive, which is the worst, when you haven't been sharing all of these things and now you have like just a dump of emotions on them, that pushes them away even more because you didn't even give them an opportunity as these lists were building up of things that they could be working on. Or you might be coming from a position where they always think you're nagging. That's when I incorporate like the spicy tip jar. And if it always feels like you're complaining about your partner, you need to do some assessment on yourself on like why you want to be in this relationship. If you're so dissatisfied, is it work that you need to be doing, or is it really about them and someone else will appreciate them? But if you do want to get, a little spicy with it and make it more loving, the spicy tip jar is a great way where like instead of complaining and nagging on a weekly basis with your partner, you put the one thing that you want them to work on in the jar. You don't get to vocalize it, you just put it in the jar. But then you also get to put an affirmation in there, which is like a compliment or something that you love that they are doing well. And then the third thing you put in there is like a new sexy position that you want to try, or a new restaurant that you want to go to, a new activity that you guys want to do. So there's 3 tips that go in there on a weekly basis. So each time, every Friday, you guys are going to both go in there after both of you have put your 3 things in there. And because they need a fair chance, they probably don't like everything you're doing either. And then you pull that out of the spicy tip jar, like, and you read it out loud, right? Either that thing that they want to work on, or that place they want to go, or that position that they want to try, or that affirmation. And now you guys are, finding a way to communicate where you were nagging all week long about it. You just put it in the jar and like give that, partner an opportunity to start to work on that thing, but also maybe have something to look forward to so that it doesn't always look like you're just complaining.
I really like that spicy tip jar, spicy. Like that's a really smart way to do it. But it seems like a lot of times what people don't want to do is the work. They hate putting in the work. Like
Right.
You're not going to get that person if you don't put in the work. What is like some little steps that you think that people should do to change their whole view or mindset when it comes to finding their purpose mate? Like they go into it with a negative mindset. So what should they do differently to put in the work?
So like, give me an example. Are we talking like in the beginning when they first started dating? Or are we talking while they're in the relationship? Give me a frame of like, who are we speaking to?
I would say people who are already in the relationship right now.
Okay. And they
Yeah.
don't want to do the work that it takes to restore the relationship?
No, they're just kind of like winging it. They're just winging it. They just kind of bounce off each other. By that time, it's kind of like relationship's not even really there, but both of them are just too kind of like, I guess, afraid to really admit that.
Okay. They need to let each other go then. So like if neither of them wants to do the work, you can't, there's no kinds of solutions or rectifying the relationship if both people aren't willing to do the work. And even if just one person's willing to do the work, you still can't have a healthy relationship. It requires both parties. And so if just like if you guys are like dating and only one person wants to commit and the other person does, you're still not in a committed relationship. Like it doesn't matter about just like one person's wants. This goes back to my point earlier about like there's wanting and then there's willing. And so like wanting are the people who are like, I wish on a star that we could do better, or, you know, I hope and pray that we can do better. But like, those are just the positive like thinkings and wishes and desires of your heart. But it's the behavioral changes that need to happen in order to bring it to fruition. Mm-hmm. So the wanting part is like, Lord, please save my marriage. The willing part is listening to the discernment of, okay, here's a list of 5 things that I'm actually going to like apply or try to save my marriage. And that may look like workshops. That may look like journaling. That may look like couples coaching or therapy. That may look like a couples retreat. That may look like seeking advice from healthy relationships and friends that can counsel you. That may look like you even looking at a YouTube channel, or, you know, you guys trying to put love back on your to-do list and creating a calendar of things that you guys can now do to incorporate passion back into the relationship. That may look like you guys, you know, getting a new sex book and trying new different positions if it's about physical intimacy. That may look like you guys having like, you know, these heart-to-heart conversations where you share more about, you know, past experiences and working through like having, you know, conversation about like, well, what is it about me that you don't like and what would you like to see different? Mm-hmm. So I usually tell people, ask like, how can I show up for you better? Because oftentimes we want to just attack the person on what they're not doing versus finding out what motivates them and how to get their needs met. Mm-hmm. Usually if I can satisfy your needs, I'm more likely to get my needs met. Right. But if I just go into it with just requests from you and like me not wanting to do anything on my end, I'm not going to get my needs met because you're not going to be motivated to just meet my needs if it's one-sided. Uh-huh. So all of these are like different things that people are like, I hear you, but nah. And so if that's the case, then why are we in a relationship then? Because any relationship requires work. If you show up on your job on a daily basis, you have responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And relationships are responsibilities. Like you would like it to be like those feel good, lovely responsibilities, but it's still responsibilities. Relationship with your children is responsibilities. Relationship with your colleagues, relationship with your friends are responsibilities. With your family, responsibilities
that come with accountability that people don't be taking. But that's another
that's a whole other episode.
Spicy, why do you think men fear marriage so much? What is it about marriage they just run from?
This is like a deeper, this is a whole other episode too. There's like several elements that come into it, right? So we can talk as far as like the household and not having like the family unit ingrained in them by having both parents in the household, the divorce rate and seeing like a lack of success. And then also the culture of dating and seeing not just from like our parents' failures, but also the failures of the culture that we live in and like not popularizing healthy relationships and healthy behavior as much as we popularize ratchet and disrespectful behavior. So then there's the other element of like compatibility and us not doing the therapeutic work in advance as we're growing up and we're going through heartbreaks. When you go through these heartbreaks and you don't do the proper like healing, you now transfer that baggage or those emotions like over into the next relationship. And oftentimes we make decisions or begin making decisions from a place of fear versus love. And right. So because men don't seek out the healing component as much as women, they're also at a disadvantage because they've also been socially constructed to not be as emotionally available because they've been taught strength no weakness. That like now we're dealing with the culture of women who also have been taught strength no weakness in order to deal with these undeveloped or maybe immature, emotionally, unavailable men. And so it's turned us as a culture of women to becoming emotionally unavailable as well in order to survive. And so now, us not sitting in our feminine energy and us sitting in our wounded, we're like, well, dang, I don't like how sitting in my wounded feminine energy feels, because I don't like being a victim. So let me sit in my masculine and wounded masculine, because that at least combats all these wounded masculine men or these masculine men over here. And that's the only way that I can like get through my day and thrive and survive. But it's disillusion. It's illusional, because it's illusional. How is it? They're disillusioned. That's what I want. They're delusional. That's
delusional.
They're delusional.
That's fun.
Us as women have become delusional because we think that being like our men is what's going to change the culture. And it's not when it comes to love, right? When it comes to workplace, by all means, boss up. But when it comes to relationship, us losing our feminine energy and not being able to guide the male psyche or the male emotions, we're not going to be able to get them to cross over by operating like them. We have to soften their hearts. We have to soften their spirits. And we do that by being in our feminine energy. So we have like all this masculine energy that's going like with each other. And then there's the other element of like men not sitting in their masculine energy, sitting in their feminine energy, and us not being receptive to that either, because we have in our mind, like we want a certain type, or, we reject some of these like men who really are about love, but because we're not ready or we're hurt, we reject them and we miss out on beautiful relationships that could happen. So I think men seeing all this, they're like, I'm just not going to choose. I'm just not going to go down that lane. I've seen a lot of the financial losses. I've seen a lot of like the frustration. And us as women also, this is another element, have become more sexually empowered, but also promiscuous. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
And so them getting their sexual needs met and not having to sign up for the responsibility of our emotional needs, because remember, we're sitting in our masculine energy, behaving like them, makes them less likely to feel like they need to sign up for the entire program of what a relationship entails, because they can get, the milk without having to buy the cow. So they're like, if I can have a multitude of women who throw themselves at me or who are available to me, and I don't have to commit, or all these women are going to compromise because of their self-worth, because they maybe didn't do the healing work, like, why am I going to sign up for being responsible for these women when I don't need to?
Right.
Like we're not requiring or demanding that of them. We're not holding men accountable the way that we should.
Now, from your experiences with your clients and your friends, what would you say is the most common reason why a lot of relationships do not work out?
Similar to the answer that I said earlier about intimacy and what I just explained right now, that is like why relationships don't work out. Relationships aren't working out because people operate from a place of fear. They're not doing the healing work. And they're also not willing to do the work within the relationship to strengthen the relationship. Because they lack some of that self-awareness, they're not able to self-regulate. They're not able to see like their areas of weaknesses and then improve upon those areas of weaknesses. So if you go into the relationship with preconceived notions or expectations, but like, and then those go unmet, but you aren't doing the work to make those expectations met, and you haven't communicated those, you're going to be disappointed every single time. And a lot of us don't communicate our needs. A lot of us don't even understand why our needs are what our needs are. We just come in with preconceived notions about what it's supposed to look like. But one thing I always ask is like, well, who set those examples for you? Like, who showed you what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like so that you would know what to mirror? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is like, no one. TV, my homegirl and her relationship. So I'm like, okay, but we haven't had the example set for us. So because of the lack of example, and like I said earlier, conflict resolution, we don't know how to problem solve. So we'd rather just throw the relationship away or cheat or risk losing it or like keep our wall up than we would like actually learning to love someone. And that takes a lot of work. Like it takes a lot.
Exactly. Which services that you do offer and how do they differ from each other on the Spicy line?
I offer 2 services. So, and that's recent. Before it was just one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
And that's like my premium service. That is it's a luxury service, right? Like being able to get relationship help. And that is the 3 months 90-day program. That's the 5 phases, 3 months, 90-day program where you're working one-on-one and one with me for our weekly coaching. And then I also give you an image consultant to like spruce up your look, a romance astrologist, and then also a online dating expert profile, like remakeover. And then the marriage and family therapist. Did I already say that?
Yeah, you
Okay.
did.
I'm like, okay, I have all my consultants. I have my team. Okay. So like we all come together and like transform your life. Then the other program that I offer is more for like the person who just wants like the accelerated spicy method. And that is a 6-week program. So they're not spending as much time with me. It's just an hour in a classroom setting after they've gone through the online e-curriculum. So that's made it so that like I can service more people who can't all do the one-on-one coaching.
The first service that you offered, did you say that was 90 days?
90 days. So it's 3 months.
90 days. Wow. Why is that? I mean, I hear so much about the 90-day rule and everything. Why is 90 days so significant to where that is like enough time to really set you up for like that purpose mate or whatever it is that you're looking for in the significant other?
It comes from your ability to like learn, consume, and like actually try out the methods. So it's one thing if you just come into it with like, okay, I'm going to give it the best shot that I can. But oftentimes there's a lot of reprogramming that we have to do and a lot of work. I have like a 60-page curriculum that I give you when it comes to like my growth guide. And so it's a lot of homework, and I need to be able to not just like make you like, or not make you, but hope that you would learn this information, but then also the application process. So like you have to actually not have to apply these tools that I gave you. So I need you for 90 days because a lot of times it's me building intimacy with you, which is why I make everybody sign an NDA because I'm like sharing and making you share personal things so that we can get to the root of what needs to be healed. But then when it comes to like the 6 weeks, that's like an accelerated, like, you know, someone who wants to get in and get out, like they just need like, you know, a spruce up or like pep, you know, some pepping in their step of the coaching. But it's really like learning the spicy method. And so the 90 days though is very hands-on. Like I'm all in your cell phone, like you don't communicate with the opposite sex without me. Like there is no sex for 90 days. It's very it's very intense.
That's a tough one.
It's very intense.
That's a tough one. Now, Spicy, what you also offer is a lot of public events too. Every now and then you would throw on a couple of events. But unfortunately, quarantine has shut that down. So this year, since things are opening back up, thank you, Jesus, what are some things we probably could look forward to in the future when it comes to your spicy events?
Well, usually I would have like March Matchness, which is like my speed dating event. I miss those. Also our Spicy Splash, which is always like a summer pool party that we do. And then Christmas time too. I mean, we weren't able to do anything, but I love having like a good, you know, speed dating around Christmas. And so speed dating is like I love, you know, those, my sip and paints. Those are always fun. But anytime that I can bring people together where like they can mix and mingle and we can create connections with like my spice breakers, which are icebreakers but spicy, like those are always really fun, good times, because oftentimes people feel like they're not able to communicate as well or show up in their best energy when it comes to like online dating. I put them in environments where they can make better connections in person. And if they've been through the program, they're like guaranteed to be more effective in person, as well as with online dating. So usually people don't feel as confident online because they don't necessarily have like the skill set or competence to be able to like communicate effectively. But if I can teach you that, I can get you over that fear and get you more successful in the online dating practice. So I like to throw these events though, so I can get like a whole pool of people together to be able to make new connections and have a good time. And it's always like music, fun, dancing, giveaways. I have to look at like when the world really is going to open up though. So I can see when I can throw another one of these events, but we have to be safe right now. So I miss March Matchness this month. But next year, I'm praying that the world will get back to like semi-regular.
Yeah, a little normal.
So we'll see. Yeah, but now it's been like a boatload of like Zoom events. So speed dating online with my Zoom events
awesome.
has been something that we've been doing. And then of course I'm always speaking at different like conferences and stuff like that. So there's always something to look forward to when it comes to like public panels and stuff. So I usually put those on the Spicy Life events page.
Awesome. Spicy, I love talking to you. We could talk all day long, and I'll talk to you soon. But I do want you to leave us, women and men, with some homework, please, to get really clear on what we want when it comes to looking for our purpose mate. So first let's start with our fellas. give them some homework because they just don't want to do the work. They're just so stubborn. But like, what is something they could do right now? Or I don't know, is it a list? I know you gave us your pizza experiment that I
Mm-hmm.
really like, but what is something else we could probably take home today?
One of my favorites, especially for the fellas, because they understand from like a business perspective what this looks like. I'm gonna give it to the fellas and to the ladies. Is the SWOT. So that is your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the strengths are like, what are you amazing at, fellas? Like, be braggadocious. Make this list of everything you do incredible. And then, what are your weaknesses? What are the things that like you're not that good at? What have women told you about yourself that you suck at? Like, what has your mom and daddy told you? Like, write down all your weaknesses when it comes to your relationships and even like your professional life. The opportunities are, that's the O, and the opportunities are like, what are the things that you can potentially work on for those weaknesses? Like, if a weakness is time management because maybe you're always late to your dates, okay, what is the opportunity that you can take in this situation? Do we set our alarm clock quicker or earlier? Do we not maybe like do as many responsibilities before we have a date? Do we like, so you are you wearing your watch? Whatever that opportunity is, like, so that you can fix upon that weakness, like, write that down. And then the last part is threats. And that's like the list of like, what happens if I don't work on these weaknesses? Like, here's the worst case scenario outcomes that will happen if I don't work on this weakness. And oftentimes you'll see that those threats really can like affect your personal life and your dating success. And so if one of your weaknesses is like ego and you aren't healing maybe some of those things to be able to like take constructive criticism, then the threat is that you're not going to have a healthy relationship, or you're not going to have a woman who like sticks around to stroke your ego or who affirms you because you think you know everything. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to do like this SWOT analysis on yourself to really get clear about what you need to work on before going into these relationships. And women need to do these same ones.
The same ones. I forgot to ask you also, Spicy, what book would you recommend for us to read to really give us an understanding of the opposite sex? I mean, there's so
If
many
you
out there, but what is your favorite?
okay, saying I have too many favorites. Like, everybody always asks me, like, what book would you recommend? Like, my number one book in the entire world is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Ooh, okay. I heard
Um,
about that one. I haven't read it yet.
yeah, but like, if you're gonna read, um, dang, if you're gonna read for men and women, dang, I still have to go with David Detta, the way of the superior man. Like, that's one of my favorites. And that's and I've even told like Head to read it, and I feel like it changed his life. He like preaches on it all the time. Anyone who I recommend to this book that read it, they're like, oh my God, Spicy, you're right. But by David Detta, The Way of the Superior Man really speaks to like how a man is supposed to operate in his masculine energy,
Mm-hmm.
and like be making sure that he's sitting in his like purpose and mission, and
Mm-hmm.
how that affects a woman and her feminine energy. I think that it's like a very empowering book when it comes to maybe men who are struggling with like self-doubt. And it also helps from the female perspective so that you know like how a man should show up, and also helping you in like being understanding of what his thought process is and
Mm-hmm.
what he may be going through and why he can't, and even in helping you like maybe encourage him in a different direction to be able to get him there.
That sounds like the Winnie book right there.
Yeah, I
I'm
love
gonna
that
have
one.
to definitely, I started reading that a couple of years ago because I also saw, I think Nipsey Hussle talked about that book too, and I
Oh
didn't,
yeah,
yeah, and I didn't finish it, but I do remember like the first couple of pages. It was pretty interesting, so I need to do my homework as well and
sit
go
with
back and
it. You
watch
need to
that.
read through it. You need to
Yeah,
read through it. My brother just told me that. He was like, Nipsey mentioned that book to me. I was like, so if Nipsey mentioned it and I never mentioned it, why haven't we read it yet?
right.
So, like, what are you waiting for? Obama to mention it? Oprah? Like, come on now. Finish the dang book, but read it through, and like, there will be things that stick out to you. I think you'll have a real appreciation for it,
Hmm.
but maybe you weren't supposed to read it at that time in your life, and maybe you're ready to receive that information now.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Spicy. I love you.
Love you
I love you
too.
so
Thank you for
much.
having me on.
Of course. And where can everyone find you at who's not already following you?
You guys can always play with my Twitter or stroke my Instagram at Spicy Madi. Go to thespicylife.com, schedule a free consultation. Always, like, you can listen to the Spicy Life podcast. Can subscribe, share it with a friend. But I would love to schedule a consultation with you, or even get you into my new Spicy e-course. So there you guys have it.
Yay. Ladies and gentlemen, Spicy Madi.
You've just been spiced.